Where did you start in this business? How did it happen?
I was just fascinated by movies. I was born into a rather strict Quaker family, and I wasn't allowed to go to the movies. And when I was about 10, I suppose, we had a charwoman. She was called Mrs. Edgerton, and her husband drove a horse cab. And she was mad about Charlie Chaplin, and she used to come back and tell me about the latest Charlie Chaplin film she'd seen. And she used to copy Charlie Chaplin, running around the kitchen table and that sort of thing. And I said, but what's it look like? And she said, oh, then he says so-and-so. I said, but there's an orchestra playing. What happens? How do you know what he's saying? And she said, well, writing comes up on the screen. I remember saying, but that can't look good. And she said, oh, yes, it looks perfectly natural. Well, anyhow, I suppose when I was about 14, 15, I suppose, was finally allowed to go to the movies. And
Any movie you wanted to? Or were they handpicked?
More or less, yes. More or less, I think. I sort of broke through that barrier. And it absolutely fascinated me. I remember Douglas Fairbanks Sr. I remember seeing a film of his called The Mark of Zorro, in which he was a great swordsman, and he'd take his sword and go, and the villain would go like this, and there was a Z carved on his forehead. Absolutely marvelous. And I always, I was fascinated even by the sort of beam of light coming through onto the screen, you know? And finally, I was no good at school, a complete dud.
Why? Didn't you like it?
Oh, I liked school, but I was just no good at it. I was no good at it. I couldn't pass any exams, and my father was a chartered accountant. He said, well, I think the best thing for you to do is to come into my office, which I did, and I lasted there about a year, I suppose. This was when I was 19, and one day I said, Dad, if I stay here, when I'm quite old, about 40, how much money do you think I can make? And he said, well, you'll be very lucky if you make £800 a year. And so then I decided to leave. And I came back home one evening, and an aunt of mine had been to see my mother, and she'd been asking about me. And my mother had apparently said, well, I don't think he likes accountancy very much. And she said, I see no accountancy magazines here in the house. I see only film magazines, as indeed there were. And she said, why doesn't he go in for films? Now, it sounds rather stupid to say this, but films had seemed such a world of magic somewhere very, very far removed that I'd never actually thought of going into them.
You didn't think you could actually earn a living in such a wonderland?
That's right. They weren't quite real to me. Oh, I did all sorts of things. I used to... it was silent in those days. There was no sound. And believe it or not, the studios were made of glass, like an enormous greenhouse, to let in the daylight, because that helped with the lights. You didn't have to use so much light if you used daylight, and the photography wasn't nearly so critical. And, I finally got into a position where I was allowed to turn the camera. You know, you turn like this, 16 pictures a second. I can still do it. I used to practice for hours. The thing is, you don't do that. You do it from the wrist.
Why? What difference does it make?
Well, I suppose after a bit you'd get terrible
Oh, I see.
shoulder ache. I don't know what the reason is, but I was terribly proud of that, still am. And then I was all sorts of things. I was assistant director. I was even wardrobe mistress on one film. And
Wardrobe mistress.
yes, that's what they called me. And then what happened? Oh yes, I thought, being in a very lowly position, I was never allowed to go and see the rushes because only the grand people went in to see the rushes. And I made friends with a projectionist. And so instead of sitting in the theatre, I used to stand beside the projectors and look through the hole onto the screen. And one day I went in there, and they were running some cut stuff that I'd been working on the floor. I'd seen all the shots taken, and suddenly I saw it cut. And it was absolute magic to me. It still is. It would be magic to anybody now, because nobody knows about cutting. And I thought, that is the place to be. And so I went to the director and said, look, please, can I come and help you in the cutting room? And I made myself useful there. And one day, sound came along, and the directors always cut their own films up to that moment. Do you have a cigarette?
Yes, thank you.
And sound came along, and there was only one man in the studio who knew how to synchronize sound, because sound, as you know, there are two films, one for the picture and one for the sound.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this threw a spanner in the works, and the chap who knew about it was the man in charge of the newsreel, the cutter. And he said, I can spare you 2 hours, this to the director. And he spent 2 hours with the director, and thank God, the director didn't pick it up, and I did. So I ended by more or less cutting that film. And
Thank you.
after that, this chap who taught us how to synchronize sound left the newsreel, and his assistant took over, and they had some shots of the Graf Zeppelin, and they appeared in the cinemas with the Graf Zeppelin flying upside down and backwards. And so they fired him, and they were in a pretty desperate situation, of course, and so they came to me and said, would you like to take over the cutting of the newsreel? And of course, I thought I wasn't really competent to do it, but I said yes, and did this, and somehow I somehow scraped through. I used to write the commentaries, speak them, and cut the film. And for this, I got the enormous sum of £5 a week. But I was madly proud. Then I went on to Movietone News. Then I went into studios, and I was given a film which was produced by Alexander Korda to cut. Now, in a newsreel, you have a long shot of people rushing down a street or whatever it is, and if you have one close-up of a man yelling in the middle of it, this is absolutely marvelous. And you have the long shot and you cut to the close-up. Now, I went into the studio, you see, saw the rushes of this film, and there they were, long shots, medium shots, close-ups. So I used a bit of the long shot, a bit of the medium shot, dashed into a close-up, back again. In fact, I cut it abominably. I cut one reel abominably. I didn't see it on the screen, but unfortunately, Korda did. And I was fired the following day. And that was that.
Mr. Lean, where do you begin with an epic like Lawrence?
Blank sheet of paper,
Mm-hmm.
as with everything. You know, you read everything you can get your hands on, talk to people who knew this particular character. Then I think the only thing to do is to throw it all away and do him as you see him. Not my case, actually, in this. It's Robert Bolt, the writer, who decided this.
But how did you see him?
Well, I saw him, I think, more or less as we've got him on the screen, more or less. The only difference is that, I mean, some people have complained, I don't think it matters at all, is that Lawrence happened to be about 5'6" tall, and Peter O'Toole is something like 6'3".
Mm.
Well, as we are not making a picture of a short man who had an inferiority complex and therefore became a dictator, I don't think it really matters.
What was he?
Well, he was a very complicated character. I think it obviously depends on the viewer. I think we have a solution there. It's not all that plain to see because we didn't want to underline a lot of it, but I think it is there. It's frightfully complicated to explain, but he's a young man who had a fatal flaw in him, and if he'd been lucky, that flaw would not have been exposed. But it was exposed, and he could never forgive himself. He became absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm. So that is what you would say to the criticism that there is no resolution?
I would, yes. I say, if you have eyes to see it, there is one. Those who say there isn't haven't seen it.
Why does it have to take 3 years?
Well, it's a big picture, you know. It was not only just making a movie, it was arranging an expedition. We shot in deserts in Arabia that I don't think any Europeans have ever been to before. The maps are incomplete, and we had to go there and find out the terrain for ourselves. We had an aeroplane, for instance, and I spent hours flying around in this plane, and we'd look down out of the windows of the plane and think that would be good. Then we'd find a place to land. Generally in Jordan, there are lots of these enormous mud flats, and so you take the plane down. It's baked mud, like a lake, and we'd take the plane down, do some dummy runs over the mud flat, see that there weren't any rocks there, and then down we'd come. Then we'd walk a bit. Maybe it looked good, maybe it wouldn't. And if it was good, if we thought it would be good for one of the scenes, we then marked this on the map, and then people would come out with all the apparatus and the tents and the caravans, and we'd set up a camp there.
Now, in a picture that takes 3 years and costs millions of dollars, where does the waste occur? How much waste is there in something like Lawrence of Arabia?
Well, it all depends what you call being wasteful. I mean, if I were an amateur, I might accuse you of being wasteful. You've got 2 cameras, one there and one there. Mm-hmm. Now, you can't use both. You're either going to use that camera or you're going to use that. So the one you don't use is waste. But of course it isn't waste, because at this point nobody can decide which camera you're going to use. And that is roughly so, I think, with making a film. But you hope, of course, when you make a movie, that everything you shoot is going to be in the film. But I don't think anybody's clever enough to know for certain. I know I've shot scenes from time to time, not very many, I'm glad to say, which I've sworn would be very important and most effective. And in the end, reluctantly, I cut them out. And of course, I'm the one that's crying because of all the effort put into it. But it's not through lack of thought.
Motion pictures have been called a director's medium. Is this true? Isn't it, in fact, a star's medium?
I think it's really a director's medium, you know. Stars are very, very valuable, and what's more, they are the people that the public see on the screen. And but they are essentially, and I say this in the best way, puppets. They are speaking words written by somebody else. They are wearing costumes designed by somebody else. And every situation they're put into has been designed by somebody other than them. But it does not appear so on the screen.
And they don't believe that either, I don't think.
No, I mean, stars know this, of course. The director has the last word in the way a scene is played, if actors stand, sit, walk, whatever else they do. The director is in control, so I would say that it's his medium.
Well, you don't mind the stars getting billing in most pictures. What about the producer? producer it off into Stanley Kramer's production, Preminger's production.
Yes, well, this is another thing, you know. I mean, the movie business is filled with rather high-powered egos, and certainly there are battles between directors and producers as to who shall get top billing. The producer generally wins because he generally holds the purse strings. But
I noticed that with Lawrence of Arabia, it says Sam Spiegel and David Lean. Was there ever any billing problem there?
of course, I mean, it's settled in quite an amicable way before the film is made. One says, I will make this film if the billing is such and such. And whoever's making the film can agree to it or not. You know?
Mm-hmm. So there wasn't any.
So in this case, it was agreed to, yeah.
Speaking of stars, the salaries that they now command, I think, are fantastic. Elizabeth Taylor, $1 million. Burt Lancaster, $500,000. And Lawrence Harvey, of all people, $350,000. Are these people worth it? They are puppets, you said.
Well, yes, I think they are worth it. They wouldn't get the money if they weren't. I mean, Elizabeth Taylor, what does she get? What did you say?
$1 million and a percent.
And a percent.
Gross.
Well, the movie people are pretty shrewd people, and I can't see them paying $1 million plus a percent unless they think they're going to make much more than she'll make.
Considering everything an actor would give, let's see, creative ability, stability, his performance, is there any one actor that you respect more than anyone else?
Well, I think the actor that I've enjoyed working with more than anybody else is Katharine Hepburn. I did a film in Venice with her called Summertime here and Summer Madness in England. And she's a joy. She's a wonderful technician, and she has, I think, a great, great gift. And on top of that, I happen to like her very much personally. She's a great human being.
I saw a bridge in the River Kwai, and at the end, you blew up a bridge. Now, you're talking about cutting and reshooting a long shot. You couldn't have shot that bridge blowing up 4 or 5 times from 4 or 5 different angles, could you?
No, of course not.
How did you do that?
What you do is you have 4 cameras. And it's a dreadful business, really, because it's a matter of guessing where the best angles, what the best angle is going to be. And in fact, on River Kwai, I missed the boat completely on one shot, and the bridge blew up in one camera, and it never appeared again. Now, it was just a shot of water with bits of plank arriving in the water. But because the experts who blew up the bridge assured me that it was going to fall over like that. And so I had a camera here ready for it to fall into picture. They got frightened. They put more dynamite in than they should have done, and the bridge just collapsed like that. But I had, of course, 3 other cameras, and I used those 3 cameras. When you see the film, of course, you don't realize that there are 3 cameras being used.
No.
Because it goes very smoothly from one to the other.
And whose fault would that be? Would that be the cameraman or the dynamiters? Or... that you didn't get one shot?
It's my fault for misjudging.
Do you do that very often?
I don't very often blow up bridges.
What a wonderful feeling to, blow up sounds and bridges and...
No, as a matter of fact, it's not. On River Kwai, we built that bridge ourselves out of jungle timber, and we worked on it, for, I suppose, 6 weeks, a couple of months, and got rather fond of it, in its way. And I remember seeing a strange man coming along one day, and they said, oh, that's the explosives expert. And I thought he looked rather like the butcher coming along to kill our favorite pig, It's rather sad.
Yes,
see it go, it's so wasteful. although the bridge went from nowhere to nowhere.
I was thinking of another picture that you did, Oliver Twist. You have a little dog. What's his name, Sykes?
Bill Sykes' dog, yes.
And he's committing some crime, and the dog is very well directed. Now, would that dog just do that, or did you direct him? How did you handle the dog?
Yeah, that was rather an amusing story. Well, the idea was that this Bill Sykes is killing Nancy, and I didn't want to show this sort of terrible sight. And so he started sort of hitting her, and so I thought, well, I'll cut to a dog, because I think if you don't see what's going on, but you see the dog's terror, it'll be more effective. And so as the first blow was struck, I cut to the dog trying to get out of the room and stayed on it. Now, the problem was how to make the dog try to get out of the room. And we tried all sorts of things, and, you know, when you start filming, the animals never do what you want. And they always say children and animals, and it's quite right. Anyhow, we got this dog, and a property man came along with a stuffed cat. And we showed the dog the stuffed cat, and it went mad. So what we did for the actual shot was this. He wanted to eat this cat, and we got somebody holding the dog here. We had the door over there, waved the stuffed cat at the dog, shut the door, put its tail underneath for one moment, withdrew its tail, let the dog go, and it went like a rocket for that door, trying to get under the door to get where it knew the cat was. And that's how we got the shot.
So he wasn't a method actor, after all.
No method, no.